I bought a house when I was 26 and fell immediately into poverty.
Many millennials regret buying homes.
When did we stop building real houses and start building houses made out of glue and bark chips and list them for $1 million?
So the more I've looked up clips talking about the issues with the real estate markets, the cost of living, any of the job markets, everybody just really struggling right now, the more clips I've seen talking about home buyers having remorse over their purchases. Now, I don't have to tell you, it's been a mess since COVID, and even with all the interest rates, prices are still rising. Of course, it does depend on where you live in the country, but there are a lot of people now who regret buying the house that they bought a few years ago for a number of reasons. So we're going to go over a lot of examples today, along with some of your comments from previous videos. So if you want to be featured on a future video, leave it in the comments below. But we're going to start off with this woman's experience.
I bought a house when I was 26 and fell immediately into poverty. Okay, when I lived with my parents, I was living my best luxury lifestyle. I went to South Korea, bought a 2000 plane ticket, didn't even blink twice. I went shopping, luxury goods, all that. Was traveling, was just, oh, I was living it up. I felt rich. I had no bills. And I had a full-time 9-to-5 job. I was working as a nurse. Okay, I was killing it. I bought my own house. That first mortgage payment came in and I was like, oh, this is a situation. But at first you think you can handle it, right? Like, you know, what's a couple thou? What's a couple thou? I got it. But then the pipes in my 80-year-old home broke immediately as soon as I bought the house. Wiped out my savings. Then another pipe in a different area of the house broke. Okay, I'm struggling. Okay, I need help. Then my neighbor's pipe, it was a twin house, her pipe broke. And she didn't believe that her pipe broke, but her pipe broke on my side of the house. So all of that water that was coming down was spraying into my home. And then my water heater broke. When I tell y'all, I went from living in the lap of luxury to destitute immediately. Now, don't get me to fooling y'all, because it was worth it in the long run, because that house is now worth like 2 times what it was worth then. So I'm actually doing pretty good. But at the time, when I tell you I was struggling, I had to go to my parents every other day for dinner because your girl could not feed herself.
Okay, so real quick, we'll go over some of the comments from this video. This is exactly why I say home ownership is not for me. When you rent, that is your max, and when you own, your mortgage is your minimum. And 2 of my friends make 6 figures. As soon as they closed on their house, they immediately became house poor. Entire savings immediately gone. Now, there are a lot of talking points in this video. I'd say the first one right off the bat is something that I made a dedicated video about. People are staying in their parents' house longer and longer when they have full-time jobs, and I thought it was a good thing. That's exactly what I did. I've only been out of my parents' house for a little over a year now, and with having a full-time job online, I was able to get way farther ahead than most people, even though she ended up taking a whole bunch of trips and spending a lot of the money because she didn't really have any bills to pay. So you feel a lot more rich when there's not as much responsibility as when you buy a house and have a mortgage. But that doesn't mean she was spending every cent coming in. She had some sort of money to put a down payment on this house, and like she said, she was a full-time nurse, so she was probably making a decent amount of money, so even a couple $1,000s worth of a mortgage probably wasn't that bad. But unfortunately, everything started going wrong. Pipes bursting left and right, the water heater, and she did say that she had a very old house, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but she didn't have enough money saved for the mortgage, all the utility bills, internet, phone, car payments, if there are any, on top of all the repairs that are never cheap. And then at the end of the video, she says it was at least worth it for her because her property ended up doubling in value in a few years. And I think that's what a lot of people started to do. I mean, you get hammered in your head nonstop. If you watch any financial YouTuber, any wealthy person online, a vast majority of them always say get into real estate. It's the easiest way to build wealth. But right now in this market, of course, it is variable depending on where you live in the country. But I still doubt that you'll get as lucky as this woman having a property double in value in this market within a couple of years. So she kind of got away with it in this situation, but I don't think a lot of other people are, and they're starting to regret it. We have a comment from one of you guys. Our AC went out at the beginning of the summer. That was a cool $22,000 to fix. It's really no joke. House maintenance. That's crazy. That's a car right there. And don't forget, when you do use your home insurance for a claim, they raise your premiums immediately. And you could clearly see many examples right now in Florida when they got hit with the hurricane. A lot of people are getting screwed over there. And I think part of the problem is people are getting bank loans for houses that are kind of skirting on the line of affordability, especially because if the mortgage is $2,000, it's not like you're just going to be spending $24,000 a year on the house. Of course, there's going to be maintenance and upkeep. But when you go to the bank and see how much you could actually get a loan for, and it's more than you expected, and you start looking at these houses that are ever increasing in price or just really large square footage in really nice areas, people start getting in their head that they could afford a house that's kind of in a gray area.
Many millennials regret buying homes. This is why it's important for you to run your numbers so that you don't end up house poor. Let me show you what I mean. What you can qualify for and what you can comfortably afford is sometimes two different things. So if you make $100,000, the typical debt to income ratio a lender is going to use when qualifying you is about 40%. That gives you $40,000 divided by 12 months, gives you a monthly allowance of $3,333 if you have no debt. So you could buy probably around a $400,000 house, your payment would be around $3,300, and you would just qualify and you'd be celebrating. But the next step you must take with your family is, what is your take-home pay? If you make $100,000, your take-home pay is around what? $6,200? If your house payment without utilities or anything is $3,300, that is 53% of your net pay. This is where you're creeping into the house poor area, and you don't want to be there. But I understand your frustration because you're like, hey, I make 100 grand. How can I find anything for under 400,000? Because back in the day, the financially responsible thing to do was to have your house payment be about 30% of your net. But if that were true for someone making 100K today, they would have to buy a $240,000 home, which doesn't really exist in most places. So I understand your frustration, but when you sit down with your lender, also sit down with your family, talk with your lender, and look at your net pay so that you don't end up house poor and you can actually enjoy the home you're purchasing.
And one of the things that is pretty tough that, of course, everybody has to look up for themselves at the specific time that they're going to buy a home is that the amount of variability is insane. Interest rates are all over the place depending on what time the video is uploaded, if you're looking at any information. And because of that, the mortgage payments could be wildly different. Of course, if you bought it the best time during COVID, you could probably either afford way bigger of a house than you probably should have because the interest rates are so low, or your mortgage payment is vastly less than somebody who bought the same sort of house in the same neighborhood in the past couple months. There are some comments from this video as well. People forget that your mortgage is going to go up in this economy. Insurance, escrow, property taxes all increase. And like I said before, especially where you live, if you're in Florida right now, I bet the insurance is pretty rough for you because if you're in the path of where most hurricanes hit, most likely you're going to take some sort of damage or flooding, and because of that, premiums are going to go through the roof right now. Why do people ignore property taxes and utilities? That's at least another $600 a month on top of the $3,300, so you're getting into $4,000 a month if you have that exact $100,000 a year and 62 net income per month. So you're getting into very dangerous territory where most of your money is just going into the home. Our mortgage is 37% of our net pay and everything else has skyrocketed, so now I feel house poor. Everything you have to take into account, I don't think a lot of people have done that recently, especially around my age with first-time home buyers, and they don't realize how expensive this could actually become. Here we have a comment talking about how much you could get a loan for. You want to know how people are still buying homes? We make around $100,000 a year and we were just approved for a $450,000 mortgage. Insane. There's no way we're doing it, but that's why prices are still up, and some people are.
I regret buying a house. I regret it a lot. If I could go back to January 2022, I would tell that girl, do not. Just find another apartment to move into, because doing all this shit that I have to do for this house and all the unexpected costs, high dollar unexpected costs that I keep running into, to be handling it by myself, is ass. So to all you young women who want to go out and buy a home, I encourage you to really, really think about it. Talk to some people and really see the ins and outs. I mean, it always sounds good. Oh yeah, your mortgage is only going to be $1,000 until they reevaluate your property taxes. And that bitch goes up $200, you know? It's trash. 85 degrees, your AC is going to go out. You don't want to know how much that costs. It's trash.
Now, one of the comments from this video I thought was pretty interesting. You know, what might happen in the future? As a single woman, I will not. It's an investment when you have help. It's not worth it by yourself. I'm a realtor and the expenses are astronomical. Now, if you look at each one of the younger generations, less people are getting married, less people are having children, less people are in relationships in general. They're choosing to stay single. So what's going to happen with all these houses if most single people can't really afford all the expenses, but a lot of people are not getting into relationships? relationships. It seems like that could be another issue that plays into the you will own nothing and be happy. There are whole entire communities, towns being built that are all single family homes that are just to rent. They're not even an option to buy. So I mean, that could just be another problem in the future. But we have some more comments. Maybe you bought at the peak of what you qualified for. That's where the struggle mostly is. I qualified for a $350,000 house last year, and he bought a $250,000 house, and it's been a blessing. So I'm not saying we're getting close to the issues of the '08 financial crisis where people were getting loans for houses they had no business owning, and that's why there were so many foreclosures and all of those issues. But it does look like some people are getting a little bit over their head, even though on paper they should be able to afford it, but a vast majority of their monthly income is just going into keeping the house afloat. And the last comment here I had an example for, still cheaper than renting. And of course, I'm gonna beat it into your heads. It all depends on where you live. What part of the state, what part of the country is vastly different, but from my own example right now, where I am currently renting a townhouse for $22.25 a month, the rent has not caught up with the mortgage prices around me. I have houses across the street that are $500,000 plus, and just recently there's somebody down the street selling their townhome, the exact floor plan, everything's the exact same as what I live in right now, for $480,000. So when you look up that listing, the monthly payment after putting down a almost $100,000, $96,000 would be almost $1,000 more a month than I'm currently renting. So I know the argument that everybody says until they're blue in the face is that at least I'm owning it. I'm not just throwing it into the fire. Even though I personally wouldn't own a townhome, it would just be like a normal single family house. But that is way more money than I would be spending to rent here for going on 2 years now. And of course, if there's anything that goes wrong in the house with the 3147 mortgage, I have to pay for it. If anything goes wrong here where I'm renting, I have to call up my landlord and he has to pay for it. And I'm definitely not against home ownership. I've been looking at buying a house within the next year or so, but it's definitely not going to be where I currently live, and it's not for everybody either. We have another comment from one of you guys. My house was built in '76, and in the past 13 months, I've had the drain field and septic fail and need a new roof, almost $50,000 in repairs. So that's pretty rough. And with the first clip of the woman having an 80-year-old house and then this person's house being built in '76, a lot of people's argument is that you should get a new construction build. Of course, even if the house was built well 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, things are eventually going to fail. It's not like they're built to last forever, and that's where a lot of these crazy costs come from. But I made a quick video talking about new construction on my second channel, and it is not good.
I'm honestly kind of shocked. When did we stop building real houses and start building houses made out of glue and bark chips and list them for $1 million? So this is what I'm talking about right here. $1 million for a bunch of junk OSB plywood and bent 2x4s. Plastic plumbing, all thrown together by the cheapest possible bids they can probably get. And you don't even get any land for your $1 million. Look how tiny this lot is. This right here is the new type of house they're building in the suburbs of Portland, and it costs $975,000. Literally everybody I know wants more affordable housing, but all we get are these monstrosities that are so incredibly expensive. And an HOA that costs $100 a month and doesn't let you do anything. And that's all they're building, all around me. They opened up all these acres of old farmland, and all they're building are these ginormous houses. Even Zillow estimates the payment on this place to be over $6,000 a month. And unfortunately, this is the future we're looking at, where no normal working class person will be able to own a home. We're talking about something like 5 or 6 of the average salary around here in order to purchase this house. Now make that make sense.
So we have brand new construction being built with very poor materials for unbelievable amounts of money. And then you do have the opposite side of the spectrum. Now I've seen clips from Clayton Homes, which is in my general area in North Carolina, but I bet there are homes like this all across the country that are advertised as very cheap. Here you could see this listing. The Carolina Southern Belle starts at $180,000 before option, and it looks like the new modern kind of millennial gray type of house, but $180 looks a lot better than the average $430,000 house. These houses are built just as poorly. You could look up a whole bunch of TikToks of just crazy poor construction on any of these houses. So overall, it really doesn't look like the new construction is built to last either. So you have to be in the perfect middle ground, I guess, of not buying a house that's too old because things will start eventually failing and falling apart just because they've been there for so long, or the brand new construction is just being built by the worst materials and worst labor with sky-high prices and the building's not even going to last.
It's a brand new house. You don't need your home inspected. Shout out to Preston Kincaid and the Mole Lumber. Looks like this builder bought wood from the same place. This stringer is cracked from top to bottom, all the way down. Look at that, it goes through and through. That's why you need a brand new house inspected.
So this guy's page is basically dedicated to this. He's a home inspector showing all of these brand new builds that are really expensive with just the worst construction possible. The moldy wood, it was cracked, but they don't really care. They're trying to put up these houses as quickly as humanly possible because they'll buy a massive amount of land and build an entire community with the same kind of house with similar floor plans, and then the prices will be sky high and they'll sell it to a whole bunch of new families. And then within a few years, you'll start seeing some issues with brand new homes.
Okay, let's check out the roof. What? I didn't even make it up on the roof yet. Again, pressure should be below 80. Missing the anti-siphon device. Check out these gutters. You think that's gonna catch the water? Looks like the water is just gonna dump right over it. And then on this side, you can see our downspout right here, but the gutters are sloping that way and also kind of sagging. No window screens. Did a bang up job with the caulking. Another window. Well, guess they don't want me to take the panel cover off. That's locked, which means I can't get to that screw to remove this cover to look inside for safety issues. Okay, here we go. Is the air filter dirty? Oh yeah. Ugh. Top of the shower should be sealed. Don't want mold back there. That is supposed to go, yeah. Where's the vent?
And these are from houses that are over the average price. I mean, $750,000 for all of those issues he just found really quickly. So what kind of issues are being made for the somewhat, I guess you could say, affordable houses that people are buying? But then we've heard for years that you need to buy a property right now. Housing is only gonna go up. I don't want my kids to have to pay $5,000 a month for rent, so I'm gonna buy a house now. And then they go and panic buy these houses that are falling apart from day one.
I am this close to just thinking maybe it is better to rent for the rest of my life than to actually own property. Which sounds sad to say, but hear me out. It has always been my dream to purchase my own home, which is the whole reason I even started working 2 jobs for the last 5 years, hustling my ass off because I want to purchase my home so bad. I feel like a part of me is starting to realize there's so many cons to owning your own home. For example, number one, if I were to buy it in California, I would have to have a 30-year loan. And I don't want to spend the next 30 years of my life paying off my home. That means I'm never able to just up and leave because now my home is here, my life is here. If anything goes wrong as a homeowner, I have to fix it, which could be so expensive. Roof, plumbing, maintenance, all of that, right? That's something I would be responsible for. If I move out of state though, which by the way, I can more than enough afford to pay off the home within like 5 years, then I had to pick up my whole life here, move it somewhere else, hopefully find a job over there. Even if I move it there, regardless, I can't just leave. Now my home is there. Versus if you rent, like if you rent an apartment, if anything goes wrong, you're not responsible. Also, you can up and leave whenever you want. You're not restricted. You can break the lease and you can move to another state if you please to. I don't know. What do you guys think?
We have some comments from this video. I've owned a home since 2011. It's a bottomless money pit. Spent tens of thousands on repairs, issues that happen unexpectedly, of course, HOA, property taxes, etc. It's not all that it's cracked up to be. I'm in the same boat as her, at least right now. I don't know if I actually want to stay here. I don't know if I could really afford to stay where I currently am if I do want to buy a house. So I think renting, at least right now, is the best option for me. But we hear over and over again that property is an investment. You should buy a property, it grows wealth, and you need to buy right now because it's only going up. It's just going to get even more expensive for you. But most of the time when you hear all of these like finance influencers or just wealthy people in general online talking about it, it's because they buy rental units, or at least like duplexes and triplexes, live in one of them and then rent out the other ones. Like we saw in the first clip, it's very rare for your house to double in value within a couple years, but you get a lot of people who will say that's how easy real estate is, just buy a property. Even though we're at around $400,000 per house right now, do you really think it's going to turn into $800,000 in a couple years? But that is another one of the issues with social media and being able to be persuaded by a lot of these people. And like I said before, I'm not saying that we should all rent forever. It's just some people jump into the deep end of the pool and they don't really know what they're getting into. And the type of houses that I'm looking at are nowhere near the price of where I currently am. Like I said, down the street, there's a townhome for almost $500,000. Across the street, there are single family homes that are just built, all the new construction stuff that we saw with the poor materials, for at least $500,000, $550 plus. I saw some of them for $750,000. And I'm looking at houses that are $300,000, $315,000, way under what a lot of people are looking at, because if anything does go wrong, I'll have enough money to save to be able to fix, you know, the pipes bursting or the water heater going out and not immediately going into debt and becoming house poor.
When I tell people that I made $85,000 when I was 22, and then at 25 is when I made my first six-figure salary, a lot of people ask, you know, why didn't you buy a house? You should buy a house. The market's going to go this, the market's going to do that. You should buy a house. The reason why I have never bought a house is because it doesn't suit me. A lot of people buy houses because they think it's like an escape plan and that's how you're going to get rich. And especially Australians. Now, when I speak to Australians, a lot of them think buying a house is like the end goal, be all, end all. I have a completely different plan. And on top of that, I just don't want to be house broke. If you've ever heard what house broke is, it's when your mortgage takes up more than 30% of your payslip. If I was going to buy a house at 85, 100% I was going to pay more than 30% of my weekly paycheck on a mortgage. That would make me house broke. I don't want to do that. When you're buying a house, I need you to think, do I want to buy a house because it's what everyone's told me to do? Or do I want to buy a house because this is something that suits me, especially me as well? I didn't want to live in Australia. Buying a house in Australia wouldn't have made sense because there's no way that I'd be able to manage it from overseas. It just wasn't feasible. It wasn't a right option for me. So before you buy a house, really think.
And I think this clip definitely does show that this is not only a US problem. Australia is really bad. I know that Canada is really bad as well. So a lot of the topics that I cover on this channel isn't just a single American problem. It's happening all over the world. I would honestly say, especially the housing issue is worse in Canada and Australia especially, but it's no walk in the park here because everybody's panicking, thinking they'll never be able to afford a home unless they buy it right now. And then they immediately become house poor because they were barely able to hang on to the payments and anything goes south in the house and they just can't afford to repair it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. YouTube thinks you'll like this video popping up on screen right now, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and I'll talk to you guys later.